how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering colleges to cancel DEI in another state. Activists are furious. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. Coming from the local ABC News. New bill tackles divisive concepts at Kentucky colleges with diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. Senate Bill 6 would open up an avenue for students and faculty to file lawsuits against universities for individual policies deemed to be divisive. From InsightIntoDiversity.com, Kentucky bill targets DEI and divisive concepts in higher education. Kentucky is not the first state to take on DEI policies in colleges. This is from NBC News. DeSantis' anti-DEI law is sparking confusion, anxiety, and fear among Florida faculty. Florida's law has gone through already, and so far it's still in place. No one's been able to challenge it successfully. It is being challenged, but not successfully. From truthout.org, new college faculty and students sue to overturn Florida's new anti-diversity law. They can sue and they can try, but it doesn't look like they're going to have a chance. Texas just got about 30 laws passed tied in with DEI at colleges. From the National Law Review, new Texas law prohibiting institutions of higher education from establishing or maintaining DEI offices is now effective, and the faculty in Texas are losing their minds over it. Unfortunately, students that started to rely on getting extra special treatment are no longer going to be getting that treatment anymore. Everybody can get by on their own merit. From local ABC News, in Frankfort, Kentucky, Republican senators in Kentucky are now taking aim at what they call divisive concepts endorsed at colleges, including diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. DEI is defined by woke people as a model for fair treatment in workplaces and schools, but top GOP state senators are not buying that nonsense. They're pushing back against the effort, claiming those same programs discriminate against certain people in the college hiring and admission process. And of course they do. That's what they call equity, giving certain people different chances than other people because of their race or their gender or their skin color or their sexual preferences. Senate Majority Whip Mike Wilson is the primary sponsor of Senate Bill 6, which states students and faculty at public universities and colleges cannot be penalized for refusing to support DEI measures deemed divisive. The school will also not be able to ask an applicant about their specific ideologies or require training surrounding a divisive topic. Divisive topics include any concept seen as divisive when it comes to race or sex. Quote, "We've seen a trend in DEI policies in our public universities that attempt to divide instead of unite people in that microcosm of society," Wilson said in a press release. He did not mention a specific instance in the release itself. He doesn't need to. We're not children. We know what they're doing with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that's why there's so much pushback on it, not just in colleges, not just in schools, but in business, in every part of society. Wilson continued saying, "Instead of promoting intellectual dialogue, individualism, the content of one's character, and merit-based practices, DEI has driven a wedge against those of us who want to see Kentucky achieve greater things." Although SB 6 wouldn't outlaw DEI measures by name, it would open up an avenue for students and faculty to file lawsuits against universities or their staff members for individual programs deemed to be divisive. If successful, the payout from each of those lawsuits could range from $1,000 to $100,000. And that's great. Sue the staff individually. Make them personally responsible for it. Because yes, of course, they change DEI offices to offices of belonging, and they change the name of things and try to still discriminate as much as possible. It's absolutely ridiculous. But if you don't mention diversity, equity, and inclusion, it makes it harder for them to avoid legal responsibility. Even though companies and schools are cheating around the limit of some of these laws in Florida and Texas now, the most important thing is that they're prevented from pushing their agenda aggressively and out in the open. Break the momentum and the whole thing will fall apart. And it is falling apart. Nikki Lanier runs the racial equity advisory firm called Harper Slade in Louisville. That's this lady. She's worried the bill, if passed, could set a precedent to move away from DEI, calling it an extraordinarily self-sabotaging effort. Well, it's not self-sabotaging. It's sabotaging discrimination, Nikki. It's removing the ability and the incentive to treat people differently just because of how they were born. That is the definition of discrimination, and it's absolutely illegal. Quote, I just worry that it will ignite a broader sentiment around the already declining support for DEI. Ooh, Nikki has to admit that DEI is getting declining support. Ain't me just saying it, it's Nikki now as well. Lanier went on to say they are necessary doctrines for us to learn in order to maintain the competitive edge. What competitive edge? What is she talking about? Lanier is also worried about the ripple effects that could follow the bill, especially on the heels of the U.S. Supreme Court striking down affirmative action programs in college admissions, which they did, thank goodness, and thanks to Edward Blum and his advocacy organization. From ABC Local News, Supreme Court strikes down affirmative action, bans consideration of race in college admissions. This was such an important finding for the Supreme Court because it doesn't just affect colleges, it's gone throughout business and industry now. Businesses are changing what they're doing because they understand there really is no justification for trying to put affirmative action into their hiring processes, into their training processes. They can't exclude people from certain business opportunities and management roles based on race. Some of them are still trying to do it. A lot of them are scaling back. We do videos about this all the time. Quote, it's a very dangerous presumption that we're making in assuming that the demise of DEI is somehow serving to the benefit of the American populace, she said. Oh yes, the death of DEI is definitely a huge advantage to the American populace. Why? Because it is illegal. It discriminates against people based on characteristics and traits they get based on their birth. That's against the law in the United States. If they take away one or two or a few of your constitutional rights because it'll be fair for some people and maybe others can benefit, but you won't benefit and you won't be treated fairly, of course, what's going to happen to the rest of the Constitution? You will lose all the rights that as Americans, for the most part, we can take for granted. With people pushing these communist agendas like DEI, we can't take them for granted. We have to fight back. Last week, Republican Kentucky Senate President Robert Stivers was asked about these efforts. Quote, a couple of things that we want to make sure of is that we do things that don't hurt us in one way or another, he said. And we want to be measured in what we do. How that will eventually look is still up for debate. SB 6 would also require schools to survey students and staff to assess, quote, campus climate as it relates to diversity and publish those results. The bill has already been assigned to the Senate Education Committee, where it's expected to be discussed at length. Meanwhile, a spokesperson for the University of Kentucky said in a statement, quote, we will take the appropriate time to review the proposed legislation, and as with any legislation impacting higher education, we'll engage in discussions with legislators, policymakers, and our campus. We are a campus steadfastly committed to ensuring that we are a place of belonging for everyone, as well as a community dedicated to the fundamental academic value and principle of open inquiry and the free exchange of ideas. Those ideas are not only compatible, but essential to who we are and what we do as Kentucky's university. Between the Supreme Court and these states, whatever they're doing, it's not fast enough. They need to speed things up because it's getting crazier and crazier out there. From the Harvard Business Review, their publication under diversity and inclusion, check this out. 3 ways to embed DEI into your company's AI strategy. So you're going to mix diversity, equity, and inclusion discrimination with artificial intelligence. While AI will reshape the nature of work, it will do so in a way that makes DEI both a baseline expectation and a critical requirement for companies seeking long-term growth. How they justify that statement? Of course they can't justify that statement. For that reason, businesses must focus on designing and developing AI systems that will empower all their users by 1. Embedding DEI into the design of your AI systems. 2. Incorporating DEI into any AI-related upskilling programs. And 3. Using AI as an opportunity to boost DEI. As time goes on, DEI gets weirder and people start to feel more entitled about discriminating against other people. It's great to see Kentucky join Florida and Texas in getting legislation passed. Kentucky's legislation is not passed yet. They're definitely going in the right direction. And when you see an activist complaining about it, now you know they're definitely going in the right direction. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.